presiding pastor of Household of God Church International Ministries, Reverend Chris Okotie, this week again called on President Muhammadu Buhari to plan for handover to a properly constituted interim national government at the end of his tenure in May 2023. The evangelist says he is the only one who can effectively direct the process of repositioning Nigeria for the benefits of a truly people-oriented democracy. Reverend Okotie joins us now for a conversation on that and the state of the nation. Good to have you on Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to ask you more about this interim government that you have called for after this administration. How will this be different from what we had under Ernest Shonekan?
Well, it's important to contextualize it, and that's why I always try to preface any discussion by establishing the basis for our position. I have said that the presidential system of governance, Nigeria's second attempt at democratizing the elective process, has failed us woefully. It has become inimical and subversive to the Nigerian cause. It has polarized the polity. It has balkanized the Nigerian society. It has fractured the whole confederacy of the Nigerian Brotherhood. It has elevated corruption to an institution of Byzantine complexity and therefore must be jettisoned from the boat of national progress. That is why it is necessary at this time to engender an interim government as a mechanism for sustaining our democracy and our corporate existence as a nation. This particular interim government will introduce what I call Aboriginal democracy, which is taking democracy back to its origins, where it's not just government of the people, for the people, by the people, but government from the people, for the people, with the people, as the mechanical instrumentality for the crystallization of the Nigeria of our dreams.
Fantastic. Now, I'm just wondering, you said that you would present this proposal for the interim government to the Office of the President and also I believe that was the National Assembly when Nigerians have been sensitized on this matter. I'm just wondering what measures you're using to, what measures you're using to determine the level of sensitization.
We are involved in a process that I call the conversational level, where Nigerians are holding conversations with each other as to the viability of this project. Because we recognize that a regime change is not what is going to solve our problem. Because if you go through that route, you're just going to come back to square one. It's a journey in futility, it's a Sisyphean quest. It's like seeking to embrace an elusive phantom. Because what obtains in our nation is what I call partisanism. People don't really vote for personalities, they vote for parties. That's why I said our own experience is government of the party, for the party, or by the party, for the party. See? And to that extent, whatever you do, whoever becomes president, if we go on that path, will only bring us back to square one. So all over the nation, we have inspired our people to come together to begin to have this conversation as to how we can transmute from the present situation into an interim government that would help to create an enabling environment for leadership. Because if that environment is not enabling, then it's a Sisyphean quest, it's a waste of our time. That's what we call political recidivism, falling back to your old state. And that's what this is all about.
All right, Reverend Okotie, thank you so much for that. So what do you have to say about individuals who commend your push for restructuring and an interim government, but also see it as maybe a way of you getting power through the back door, seeing as you yourself have contested for the presidency a few times with no success? Is this something that you would agree with?
Not at all. Ordinarily, I would not nobilitate such political infantility, but for the purposes of argument, let it be known that if I was looking for a political career with a view to engendering some kind of self-aggrandizement, I would have joined the dominant parties. You cannot win an election in any nation, particularly Nigeria, if you're not involved with the gargantuan dominant parties whose tentacles pervade the longitudes and the latitudes of our political spectrum. When I ran on the platform of Fresh Democratic Party, it was with a view to finding some kind of a podium, a tribune, from which I would begin to articulate and ventilate concepts of governance that would be, strengthen Nigeria in the challenges of the 21st century. You would find, you would have observed that when President Buhari ran the first time, his party was not strong enough. And so there was a coalition of political parties that has engendered what we know today as the APC. And therefore, if I wanted to do that, as these people claim, that's what I would have done. But the fact that I didn't do that, as far as I'm concerned, is eloquent testimony to the fact that I believe in the Nigerian dream. And Fresh Democratic Party presented a podium for me, to articulate these philosophies that we're talking about today. But let me go further a little bit by saying that, you see, an interim government is like a surgical operation, a surgical theater. What we have done in the past is deal with our problems on the symptomatic level. But if we're going to eradicate these problems, we must look at them from a pathological perspective. That is the only way we're going to be able to erase all of these aberrations that we find. Our constitution, our restructuring is inevitable, because what we are practicing today is not federalism, because federalism involves the manipulation of centrifugal and centripetal forces, how they interact. People want to have an opportunity to decide how their resources are going to be controlled. And so the interim government will provide a rapprochement for people to come together and to decide so that these agitations for secessions will cease. And the reason why people are agitating for secession is because they don't have a sense of belonging. Sorry. And so if we provide that opportunity for them to come together and they recognize how important they are, and this concept of regional xenophobia will be extinguished, and we'll begin to understand that we have a common destiny and that we can translate the paraphernalia of our diversity into the apparatus of national unity. And I'm asking to do so because I've demonstrated fidelity and some kind of tenacity. I always say that I've paid my dues, denominated in tenacity and resilience. And if I wanted to be a part of this bandwagon, I would have done so many years ago when I first ran for president in 2003.
Okay, let me follow up on that. Since you're not desperate for power, as you just made it known now, then why should you be the one to lead the process of repositioning Nigeria? Can somebody else, who has a political party that is accepted, by voters, do that? And apart from that, if you're interested because you say you've paid your dues, why don't you test your popularity at the polls?
Okay, let me answer the first part of the question. Now, you must understand that the uniqueness of this interim government is because it introduces what I call Aboriginal democracy. When you propound a political philosophy, there are compartmentalizations to that concept. For instance, you have to know what the way is, the truth, the life of that concept. The way is methodology, and when it takes on political colorations, it becomes ideology, and it is ideology that begets manifesto, and a manifesto is an aggregation of philosophical abstractions that are seeking practical manifestation. Then you go to the truth. What is the basis of that concept? Is it based on fidelity? Is it based on mendacity? Now, if it is the truth, if it's based on veracity, then it becomes idealism. Then you go to the life. What is it supposed to engender? What is it supposed to fructify? So what is the life that it will produce? What is the animation? What is the galvanizing impetus? What is the meditational experiment? What is the contemplata? These are concepts that you cannot easily transfer to some John Doe or somebody and expect them to imbibe them by osmosis. It's something that must be intrinsic, internalized, and there will have to be a mechanical externalization of these philosophies when you begin to practically execute or prosecute. So on that level, it is difficult to bring somebody and say, well, this is what Aboriginal democracy is, because they don't understand what it is. For instance, I have said in our concept of Aboriginal democracy that we do not need the legislature, and that the legislature is inconsistent with our cultural realities. And so we should take the responsibility of the legislature and give to professional associations, because they do the same thing. When they come to Abuja, they are separated into committees. There are 57 standing committees in the Senate and 89 in the House of Reps. These committees deal with issues like maybe health, the military, education. We already have associations within the polity that have done this job for many, many years, and they predate the political parties. You have doctors banding with doctors, you have lawyers banding with lawyers, you have market women banding with market women in what I call the concept of gregarious socialization. They have ties of professional consanguinity, and they maintain an organic nexus by way of enterprise and endeavor. And they would be more familiar with the terrain. Some of these people in the elitist club that I call the House of Assembly do not understand the dynamics or even the polemics or the dialectics of lawmaking. So if we take this responsibility and give to these associations and their volunteers, first, it would extricate us from the burden of the financial responsibility that we have for that structure, that as far as I'm concerned, is totally inconsistent with our cultural realities. And these are the people here who have been in the polity, could be more trusted, and they would do a better job, in my view, than an elitist club that is not in touch with the realities of the times. So, again, this is not something you can communicate to someone who does not understand the mechanics of what I'm saying. See, and to even go beyond that, for over 20 years, I have stayed with this philosophy, because this is the philosophy upon which I've erected the citadel of my confidence, that if Nigeria were to embrace this, we'll be the better for it. I've not been drawn by some pecuniary inducement or some coercive arm or unseen arm of intimidation to promote the political idiosyncrasy of some juggernaut or some godfather like we see in the Nigerian experience. I have not done that. You'll never find me in the nocturnal assemblies of their political secrecy. Not a part of that. You need someone that can be trusted, somebody who has demonstrated that fidelity to the Nigerian cause, that has not aligned with the parties that have created the problems we have today, either in the APC or in the PDP. And if you can find anybody who is more qualified, you can summon a colloquium and I'll be there to defend my thesis.
Okay, well, great. Now, of course, we understand that you haven't, you've not made that submission yet to the National Assembly and the federal government concerning your proposal. But I'm just wondering, since you know that we're in a country that is religiously polarized, and you wear a very huge hat in the Christian community, I'm wondering how much you think your call for an interim government will resonate with other religions outside of Christianity, knowing that you still are very active in when it comes to the Christian faith.
I've often maintained that the Nigeria of to engender the Nigeria of our dreams, we must rise above the pastiche of religion. We must rise above the mosaic of ethnicity to an altitude where this cleavage is diminished to mere superficial lacerations in the terrain of national integration. We cannot continue to remain in the doldrums of religion and create a religious provincialism, because this is politics. Politics is the science of government. It has no conscience. It has no emotion. But what we're looking for is leadership. Where leadership involves the communication of the humane capacity in man in the organization of society for the subject of that society, which is the individual. So while politics looks at the state, which is that collective entity that represents a geographical expression of organized society, leadership looks at the individual. And what Nigeria is looking for today is leadership, and not to create a religious parochialism that is neither here nor there. What I'm asking is for the safety and the longevity of our collective patrimony as Nigerians, that we can come together as a people and demonstrate our capacity by initiating or evolving a system that caters to our cultural sensitivities or sensibilities. And religion has nothing to do with it. So, and people say to me that how has it been done in other places? I say it doesn't matter. we can bring that innovation to the Committee of Nations in a millennium where the quest for harmony and innovation knows no frontiers. And I'm saying here that at the end of the conversations, I will do a transcript to the head of state, to the president, and to the House of Assembly, showing them that this is the only way forward. Anything outside of this is going to take us to square one. By the time the tintinabulation of political victory bells have subsided, by the time the cacophony of paid pipers and their mass choirs have been consigned to oblivion, Nigerians wake up to the harsh reality that we have corroborated a status quo, and we are back to square one, even in a worse situation.
Yeah.
And I'm saying very clearly, without any equivocation or ambivalence, that the only way forward is an interim government led by Chris Okotie.
All right.
Okay.
That's my own personal view.
Well, we admire your courage and your bravery for putting yourself up for that. But I have a question. Speaking on this religious parochialism that you were talking about, we currently know that the ruling party APC has put up for elections for February, of course, Atiku and Shetima, first of all, I just want to ask about the Muslim ticket. What are your thoughts on that, since you were talking about how religion should not play such a huge role in the situation? So with Tinubu and Shetima on the same ticket, how do you think that will work out?
I think that given the realities of the Nigerian experience, that is a difficult situation. Not because people are religious, but because people understand what we have experienced in the recent past. We've seen religious fundamentalism like we've never seen before. We've seen religious parochialism like we've never seen before. And therefore, I think it is good wisdom for a political party to be sensitive, to identify with what it is that is going on with the polity, and that they would be more careful in their selection. But I want to say very clearly that I do not believe that a regime change is what Nigeria needs, whether it is Muslim or Christian. It's a waste of our time. And if we don't do the needful, we will be very, very sorry, because we are sitting on the cusp of a great crisis. And patriots must come together at this time. And our understanding of what it is that we love about Nigeria must transcend all of these cleavages and frontiers, so that we can come together as a people to salvage our nation. I would advise that the flag bearers should temporize and maintain a hiatus until we have created an enabling environment for leadership. Because if we don't do that, it's a waste of time and energy.
Now, at a press conference to herald your declaration for the presidency in 2010, you said that God told you that you would be Nigeria's president. Now you've tried at the polls, that didn't work. Now we have this, your call for interim government, which brings me to the issue of political prophecy by the clergy. How much of this type of prophecy could you say actually divinely inspired or just mind games?
The thing about this is that it is difficult to communicate spiritual realities to a mind that is not renewed. The language of faith is totally different from that which we have in ordinary parlance. Faith calleth those things that be not as though they were. When God speaks to you, he doesn't speak futuristically, he speaks in the present. God always says, I have made you. He told Abraham, I've made you the father of nations when he didn't even have a child. So sometimes when we communicate spiritual information, people misunderstand, because faith is beyond that which is cognitive. You know, it's reaching into the supernatural realm, taking that which is invisible and bringing it into the realm of animate materialism. And so when I make a statement that way, people think, oh, okay, well, he didn't win an election, and they think that it is immediate. When the Lord sent Moses to Pharaoh, it took several times of going to Pharaoh before Pharaoh capitulated. When the Lord tells you he's going to do something, he says it now, but it takes time. It took time for Abraham to beget Isaac. So we need to understand that it took time for the prophecy concerning the rainfall to take place when Noah started telling the people it was going to rain. It took 120 years before it began to rain, and people thought he was senile and crazy. You know, so many times when we talk about faith, the unbeliever, the infidel who does not understand spiritual things because they are spiritually discerned, runs into a place of confusion. But I can assure you that that which has been spoken will definitely come to pass. What I'm doing right now is patriotic. I'm trying to invoke nationalistic sentiments at a time when Nigeria needs to come together in a cohesive atmosphere where there is love, there's understanding, and there's unity. And we have that nationalistic or the Nigerian brotherhood that will help us overcome the situations that we face today. But if we're going to degenerate to ordinary politics and we forget the essence of what I'm doing, naturally it will degenerate to a situation where there's going to be crisis. And nobody's praying for that. It takes courage. It takes devotion to nation to do what I'm doing. And I know that those who are patriots can hear my voice.
Great. So let's expand this a bit and go beyond your proposal and talk about the religious community at large. I'm just wondering what role the religious community has contributed to the chaos that has become our country, and what role you expect leaders to play in the forthcoming elections to do away with issues of voter apathy and vote buying.
You know, when I began in, 2001 to pontificate on these issues, many people within the Christian community did not quite understand what I was doing. They thought there was a conflict between my ministry and that of governance, without understanding that the Bible clearly states that this covenant is predicated on the Melchizedek priesthood. And it is the Melchizedek priesthood that enables you to participate in political activity and spiritual activities. That's why Jesus is called the priest after the order of Melchizedek, because now he is not just operating in the priesthood, he is a political leader. He is called the governor of the nations. I think since 2001, there's been enough dissemination of information that has all gone well for our people. Because if more righteous people participated in the political process, we probably won't have the kind of chaos that we have now in the political putridity or putrefaction that we see today. As is written, righteousness exalts a nation, and sin is a reproach to the people. I believe that people must understand that religion creates the kind of atmosphere that would engender public responsibility. I always say that as a minister, there is a certain moral perpendicularity and political rectitude that is required of me by the one before whom I stand. And so if I say that I'm a Christian, then there are certain principles that I must adhere to. And there are certain responsibilities that I must embrace. So I think that some of my colleagues have gotten confused by some of the issues that have confronted our nation. And sometimes, because they didn't want to, quote, dirty their hands, they just kind of stayed away. And that has made things worse, because people say to you, politics is dirty, politics is dirty. When that which is dirty needs a detergent. And so if you say that you're clean by way of righteousness, then you should be.
We have run out of time, but we have one last question, and this one borders on the insecurity that is felt within the country. As a cleric, I'm wondering if you have any fears for your safety, knowing as a lot of your fellow clerics have been getting abducted for exorbitant amounts. Churches have been stormed in a very violent and bloody manner. If you do assume any sort of power, what can you do to stem this ugly tide of killings that we have seen, especially aimed at those in the religious sector?
I have said and continue to maintain that what we are seeing, we are observing, are the inevitable concomitants of a failed system of governance. Whether it is insecurity, whether it is political irresponsibility, whatever the things that we are observing today, when you telescope them into the system, you will find that they all are a result of the system that we practice. For there to be safety, we must reconsider the kind of federalism that we are practicing, because this is more unitary than federalist. So, and I believe that in an interim government, we can create an ambience, that will engender a greater level of security by giving autonomy to the federating states to participate in the process. security. So these are some of the issues that we're going to be discussing in the interim government. I believe that no matter which direction we go, we're still going to come back to the interim government as the only, possible way of securing Nigeria as a corporate entity. But we pray. Above all things, we must supplicate God because He is the one who controls the affairs of mankind. And as long as we can supplicate Him and continue to hold on to Him in faith, there is hope for our nation.